What up, Cavs Nation? I'm your host, Ethan Sands, and I'm back with another episode of the Wine and Gold Talk podcast. I'm joined. We got like the three-headed goats, as Polo G would call it. Chris Fedor, Jimmy Watkins. How are you guys doing? We're getting back from after our first media day-like press conference with Koby Altman, Kenny Atkinson. Chris, first and foremost, how are you doing? One, and two, what are your biggest takeaways from today's presser?
So this means the season is just about back already? Where did the summer go? Where did the off season go? Man, oh man. It happens quick around these parts. It also happens really, really quick when there are like different phases of the off season. Had to get through the draft, then came free agency, then summer league, and then some of these things in free agency dragged into August. Nonetheless, my biggest takeaway, I think there weren't too many. I do think it was interesting that for the first time, I think in this rebuild, Koby Altman was willing to, on the record, use the term championship. Prior to today, like he refrained from that. I think there was always this belief that the Cavs were chasing a championship, just like these other teams around the Eastern Conference. But Koby, for some reason, just like didn't want to put those expectations on the front office and on the players and on the coaching staff. And today, like he made a point to say that for us, it's about a championship. So I thought that was interesting. I thought that was also pretty noteworthy. And I think part of that is they believe in this core group that they have. That's why they re-signed the guys that they did. That's why they handed out the extensions that they did. I think they believe in Kenny Atkinson as somebody who is capable of taking them to the next level. And I think he understands that some of the progress that they have made as an organization, the next step is, going to the conference finals and the finals. And they should be acting like that. They should make moves like a team that has those goals and aspirations. They should talk like that kind of team. And it doesn't mean that they have to be chesty, and it doesn't mean they have to go boasting or anything along those lines. But they've won 99 games in the regular season over the last 2 years. They've made back-to-back playoff appearances. They're coming off an Eastern Conference semifinals appearance where, they weren't really competitive with the Boston Celtics, in part because of what they were missing in that series, Jared Allen and Donovan Mitchell. But, they showed that there is another step for this organization to take, and they showed that they can stack up with some of the best teams around the NBA. So I thought that was noteworthy, and I thought that was interesting. And the other thing that I took away is that we talked about this shortly after the Cavs made the decision to hire Kenny Atkinson. Typically, when these teams make these coaching decisions, they look for the antithesis of the guy that they had previously. If you're going through a coaching hiring cycle in the NFL and you go with the buzzy offensive mastermind and that guy fails completely, then the next time around you're like, hey, maybe I'm going to turn toward the defense. See if I can find that guy that can fix the defense, that has different ideas, that has a different skill set, It was clear that there were things that Kenny Atkinson said today that he also said in the interview process with the Cavs that appealed to them because they were the opposite of JB Bickerstaff when he was talking about, putting Donovan off the ball a little bit more, when he was talking about the usage of Evan Mobley and trying to get him to be more of a playmaker and get him more touches within the offense, getting Darius Garland's three-point attempts up, playing faster, shooting more threes, going deeper into the rotation, something that multiple people inside the Cavs front office last year tried to get JB Bickerstaff to do, demanded at points that he go deeper into his rotation and use some of the guys that this organization invested in and gave good money to. So those kinds of things, and player development was something else that Kenny Atkinson spoke about once again today. Those kinds of things are where JB Bickerstaff came up short. So it makes sense to me that Kenny Atkinson and the things that he said, both in this press conference and during the interview process, appealed to the Cavs front office. Now we'll see if he can actually implement some of those changes that he talked about.
Celebrate depth, Chris. Celebrate. Celebrate your depth. That's what Kenny Atkinson said.
Yep.
Yeah. As I said this to Chris right after the press conference, the new coach will always tell you something that the old coach didn't have. So take Kenny Atkinson's talking points at the beginning of his tenure, take JB Bickerstaff's talking points at the end of his tenure. You'll find some overlap, right? The trick is implementing. Like it's great to talk about getting Donovan Mitchell off the ball. Every basketball coach, particularly every new basketball coach in the history of basketball has wanted to get their best player easier shots. And sometimes that means catch and shoot threes. Kenny Atkinson mentioned more catch and shoot threes for Donovan Mitchell. He mentioned celebrate might be his buzzword for Kenny. He's a happy coach. Celebrate screening. Jared Allen hit some guys. Put Donovan in better situations. A lot of hinting at there's something left untapped in the Donovan Mitchell efficiency meter there. Like we can do some things to make Donovan's life easier. And that actually goes pretty nicely. Like it dovetails nicely with the idea of getting Evan Mobley more involved, because if Donovan Mitchell doesn't have the ball, who does? I mean, the answer could be Darius Garland, but if we're looking for ways to get Evan Mobley more playmaking opportunities, well, there's one. It's pretty I'm sure there will be opportunities where Evan Mobley has to make some complicated reads, but if you just tell Evan Mobley, hey, we're going to set a pin down for Donovan Mitchell, give him the ball. That's a pretty simple task that everyone can execute. It gives Evan the opportunity to work with those on-ball reps and read the floor and see those kinds of things. It also gives Donovan the opportunity to get the ball in some more advantageous situations. And we've talked about it on the podcast before. We talked about celebrating depth. That just it goes back to the conversation we had about all the injuries last year, particularly Donovan. I think another phrase that was used today was peaking during the playoffs, which I think we can all agree the Cavs have not done yet since Donovan Mitchell got here. They got embarrassed by the Knicks. And I don't really think that had anything to do with celebrating depth or lack thereof. I just don't think there was a ton on the roster, or as much as they thought there was on the roster at that time. But last year, we saw the best we saw of Donovan Mitchell was from December to February. And it was great. And the Cavs, there was a crucial part of the Cavs season that played a large role in why they ended up getting to the second round. Honestly, home court advantage, the playoff matchup they got, so on and so forth. But it would have been pretty cool to see that Donovan in April and May, right? Like he was dealing with a knee injury down the stretch. It kept him out of the Boston series at the end. He was never really 100%. Like he was laboring through some of those Orlando playoff games, particularly early on. The close to the season was pretty weird. So I think that again, they're telling us it's not just about playing Sam Merrill and digging deeper, seeing more Jalen Tyson than we might have otherwise under JB Bickerstaff. It's about, Koby celebrated Jared Allen's 81 consecutive games played streak. I personally don't know whether it would have helped or hurt the Cavs. Obviously, he got hurt by it. It wasn't like a long endurance injury. He got hit in the ribs. That was a weird thing. But it might have helped Jared Allen to play 79 out of 81 games instead of play all 81 games. Just generally, it might have helped him. He was playing great at the end. I'm not saying that contributed to the injury or anything. He was playing well at the end of that 81 game stretch. Just generally, maybe get a few more days off here and there for Jared Allen, who has been proven to be an Iron Man in this league. To Chris's point about Koby saying the word championship, it is a big thing that he even said it. I do think he still couched it a little bit. I believe one of his quotes was, "The goal is always championship," which is like, yeah, okay, you got me there. And he said we want to win playoff rounds, which again, of course, we all do. I would ask, I don't know whether the standard is championship right now. We all have a goal. I don't know what the standard is. And I think to a certain extent, what else are you going to say? We've kind of exhausted all the other rungs on the ladder here. So you can't just it's obviously not going to be, we'd like to win a playoff round. We'd like to make the playoff. This is just the natural progression of the team right here. You fired a coach who didn't make the second round. So yeah, yeah, you better have some lofty goals right now because everything that you're doing otherwise is telling me that.
And I think it's really interesting to look at all of the different things that you guys have mentioned, everything that has been said, and then kind of go a little closer in on it, right? Because Kenny Atkinson, we talked about depth a lot already, and he said that he wants to start off and say play 10 or 11 from the jump. Last season, it was more like, okay, we know JB Bickerstaff's got like 8 guys that he's willing to go to throughout the season. Now that's getting expanded to 10, 11, maybe even 12, depending on how the season pans out. Chris, I know you went to our subtexters and hit them with the question, who do you think is in the top 10 for this Cavs team? And I want to reverse it to you because I feel like we obviously know who the top 5 are, maybe even the top 8. But where would you put this depth chart as of now, even though it is really, really early, as in September?
Well, I think one of the fascinating things that I'm going to follow in training camp, guys, is just how Kenny views the backup point guard situation. Because, Ethan, we talked the other day about the Cavs went into this offseason with an understanding that their backup center was going to be Evan Mobley. So that means they didn't have to go out and spend a whole bunch of money on another center. It gave them some flexibility. It allowed them to go out and sign Tristan Thompson late in the offseason because what they need from that position, the third center on the roster, is maybe 8 to 12 minutes, maybe a stretch during the regular season where Jared Allen's dealing with something or Evan Mobley's dealing with something. But the view of Evan Mobley as the backup center, is something that shaped the way that the Cavs went this offseason and how aggressive they were in terms of attacking that particular position from a depth and insurance spot. And I'm curious when it comes to Kenny, just how he's going to look at the backup point guard spot. Is he going to say that it's Donovan Mitchell? Donovan's just going to run the team, put the ball in his hands, and utilize Sam Merrill as the shooting guard, or utilize Karis LeVert as the shooting guard, or Max Strus, however he wants to space it out and however he wants to construct those particular lineups? Or is he going to say, no, I need somebody else that can run the team, that can organize us on offense, that can get us into our sets and things along those lines? And that's where either Ty Jerome, somebody that the Cavs like and believe in and is healthy now and full go, ready to go for training camp, somebody that they signed last year in free agency, somebody that that the Cavs have liked for a while and they were excited about last year around this time. That brings him into the equation, and it also brings in Craig Porter Jr. into the equation. So that's one thing that I'm going to look at, just how does Kenny view that backup point guard spot? But, I mean, I do think the 10 makes sense, and it's relatively straightforward. Karis LeVert, Isaac Okoro, Dean Wade. I do believe Sam Merrill is a Kenny Atkinson player, and I think he's going to benefit greatly from the change in coach. And I think the leash on Sam is going to be longer than it certainly was with JB, who was so focused a lot of times on what Sam couldn't do on the defensive end of the floor, as opposed to how much he impacted the positivity of this offense and the movement of this offense and the ceiling of this offense. So I do think Sam Merrill is more of a Kenny Atkinson type player, and he's kind of that fringy guy. It's either him or Ty Jerome, depending on how that backup point guard shakes out. And then, I think Jalen Tyson's going to fight for minutes early on, but I think he's going to be on the outside looking in because I think Kenny's going to lean on his veterans, including George Niang. And I know fans don't love George. I know that there are limitations that he has as a player, especially when you get into the playoffs. But he was a big part of the Cavs bench last year. He was a big reason why they went from the third least productive bench in the NBA to middle of the pack, which is a significant rise for them. So I think it's going to be Karis LeVert, Isaac Okoro, Dean Wade, George Niang, and the 10th guy is going to be dependent on how Kenny views that backup point guard spot. It's either going to be Sam Merrill, Ty Jerome, and if he extends it to 11, then it's both of those guys.
Can I just say, there's George Niang, perfectly good 82-game basketball player.
No doubt.
Like, I know the playoffs left a sour taste in everybody's mouth. He didn't shoot the ball very well. And you found out that when Georges Niang isn't shooting the ball very well in a playoff setting, kind of, what are we doing here?
Yeah.
But he did shoot the ball well over 82 games, and he is a good kind of gritty presence out there. And he does actually as Kenny Atkinson talks about playing through, Evan Mobley more. Georges Niang is like a mini bench hub. Like Georges Niang is a guy who can get a Darius Garland or Donovan Mitchell anchored second unit to get some of those off-ball opportunities. Georges Niang was like a weird 6'7", 6'8", blobby, like offense runs through me guy in college. So like he has that skill set as well. So just like your Georges Niang rage, try to suppress it, try to take deep breaths. It's going to be a long season. You're going to need everybody to get through this season.
To your point, Jimmy, he also fits the kind of style that we believe Kenny wants to play.
Right.
He wants to run. He wants to get up and down the court. He talked earlier today, Kenny Atkinson did, about getting more corner transition threes. George is fully capable of just running to the corner and waiting for a spot up opportunity. And they want to shoot more threes. So he can space the floor. He can knock down threes. He can shoot threes. He can bring that volume up. And, defensively, there are questions about him. But, like, teams don't game plan in the regular season the same kind of way to attack one guy's weakness over and over and over again. And, yes, there are going to be times where teams are going to pull George out to the perimeter in pick-and-roll situations, and they're going to attack his feet. But it's not to the level that it happens in the playoffs where he's going to get himself played off the floor.
Plus, he's always going to be on the court with Evan Mobley and or Jared Allen. Like Georges Niang,
right.
When we're talking about staggering the bigs, like Georges Niang is a key piece of that. It's a stretch four. It's the kind of guy you need to put next to Mobley and or Allen if they're the lone big out there on offense. The other thing I'll say real quick about the 10th man situation, Sam Merrill and Ty Jerome, September basketball MVP, Ty Jerome, we should mention. Koby Altman made sure to temper our expectations. September means nothing, but apparently Ty Jerome's cooking in these like OTA open gyms that the Cavs are having. So that's exciting, I guess. I actually
last year too. One of the first things that JB Bickerstaff said on one of the first days of training camp was, "I'm going to have a hard time keeping Ty Jerome off the floor," and then Ty wasn't on the floor because he couldn't stay healthy. But, like, there were plans that the Cavs had coming into the year to utilize Ty as both the backup point guard and a combo guard, playing without Donovan Mitchell, without Darius Garland, take advantage of his three-point shooting, take advantage of his floor generalship, take advantage of his size and ability to play multiple positions. So he is somebody, I know people laugh about this because he played 2 games with the Cavs before injuring his ankle, the worst ankle injury known to man. But he was somebody that the Cavs were excited about going into last year. So I can understand how they would get excited about it again, especially when you feel like you lost out on an opportunity to see him last year.
Biggest compliment I can give Ty Jerome. Sorry, Ethan. He made Virginia basketball watchable in college. He was a fun player on a team that does not play fun basketball. Shout out Ty Jerome. He has not, to be fair, hasn't played more than 45 games in an NBA season, has never played more than 800 minutes, but it sounds like there's some fun stuff happening there.
I mean, I literally had to talk to subtexters when they were asking about updates on Ty Jerome and expectations and all this. I was like, I got here at the 3rd game of last season. Right? So I didn't get to see Ty Jerome play. So my expectations are for whatever I'm hearing from around the league, sources, whatever, and what I'm getting from these Instagram reels that the Cavs PR is putting out. Like that. So it's very hard for, especially somebody who's trying to be very nuanced and understanding of what is going on in each individual aspect of each player's game, for somebody who I literally haven't seen play yet up front and personal. But I think the other thing, because I like how we are breaking this up into the takeaways, because we were talking about the contention, right? And how not only did Koby Altman mention that they wanted to win a championship, but Donovan Mitchell, in an interview that actually came out today with Mark Spears and Anscape, said that when healthy, the Cavs are championship contenders. And he felt like the last year they grew a lot in a lot of different ways. And obviously that adheres to what they're able to do with those two big lineups, right? We talk about the two pairings that are instrumental to this Cavs roster. Darius Garland and Donovan Mitchell, Evan Mobley and Jared Allen. And we talked about it with Kenny Atkinson and Koby Altman today, and how those two guys have had conversations. And even when Kenny Atkinson was interviewing for the job, said, don't do anything with the roster. I think we can figure it out. And I want, Chris, for you to just explain how much that meant for you to hear that with all the swirling takes, all the different opportunities to be traded, signing trades, all these other different things, like for the new head coach to come in before he even has the job and say, I think we can make this roster work and become a contending team. What does that say to you about what Kenny Atkinson plans for this year?
Well, number one, guys, I think it's what the front office wanted to hear, because I think they understand one of the riskiest things that you can do in the NBA is give up on young, controllable talent too soon. Like, that's a button that you push when you feel like you don't have other buttons that you can push. And there was an obvious other button to push, and it was move on from the head coach, get a new voice, get a new leader, get somebody else that has a little bit more in terms of X's and O's, a little bit more in terms of in-game strategy, and may have the ear of the locker room in a different kind of way, may have the belief in the players in the locker room in a different kind of way. So I think the front office always went into this offseason saying, can we find somebody who's going to get more out of this group than what the previous coach did, so that we can find out what this all looks like together in a new offense, with a new coach, with somebody who is considered a little bit better when it comes to the X's and O's and the tactics in game of basketball. So I do think it's what they wanted to hear, but I also think it points to the fact that, Kenny is going to play Darius and Donovan together a lot. And he said it earlier today. He said there's no reason why they can't coexist on the floor. There's no reason why they can't be complementary players together. So it feels like he is committed to the Darius Donovan thing, and it's not a situation where he's thinking to himself, I got to find a bunch of opportunities throughout the course of the game to stagger these guys. And he also said something that resonated with me in terms of the two bigs. He said that a lot of teams around the NBA are going with the two bigs. And when you get into meaningful basketball games, especially into playoff environments, you want two bigs on the floor. You want this kind of thing to work in your favor. And I mean, I know during the regular season, there are going to be times both throughout the season and throughout games where Jarrett and Evan are going to be split up. But like, this seems like a coach similar to JB Bickerstaff, who is committed to the two big look and believes that there are significant benefits to those guys playing together, despite some of the limitations that you could have on the offensive end in terms of spacing and shooting, unless, Evan Mobley improves drastically as a perimeter player. So those two things, I think they inform us at how Kenny is going to try and go about stuff on the offensive end and on the defensive end and with his rotations. Like, he is going to exhaust those pairings, and he's going to need to see a whole lot of evidence and data that they can't work together. Each pairing can't work together before he determines that he's got to split those guys up or something like that.
Yeah, the Cavs also did sign Jared Allen to an extension. I'm not saying this means what you're going to think I'm saying it means. They did sign Jared Allen to an extension at a moment in time where if the fit isn't working, they could trade him before the trade deadline. Like, remember all the noise about Lauri Markkanen? Whenever Lauri Markkanen signed his extension with the Jazz, that meant he's staying there at least for the rest of the season, because when you sign an extension like that, you have to wait a certain amount of time before you can trade that player. The Cavs extended Jared Allen at a time where they could trade him before the trade deadline. Again, I don't think that's going to happen, but that's one data point. They also signed him to I would say a pretty market-friendly extension. Some could say a tradable extension. I'm not going to say that, but some could. Some could say that. So that's. I think they're doing a good job of maintaining flexibility in that way, because I do believe that Kenny wants to see how the Jarrett Evan pairing works out, and I do believe that there's a reason they did the Jared Allen extension when they did and how they did it, and the money matches up nicely. For if someone wants to trade for a starting center, Jared Allen's contract is workable in that way. I had something to say about Donovan, but I got distracted by how much wine is discussed in this Anscape article that he did with Mark Spears. I don't know anything about wine. I just know my mom drinks red, so I drink red with her. But the Donovan thing, I think, is mostly just, again, what else is there to say? You've done most of the things. You're like, of course, Donovan, we knew that Donovan thought they could win a championship because he signed the extension. That was already, it was said, it wasn't like explicitly said, but he already said it. And I think that, like, going back to, I love the idea that Donovan Mitchell will shoot more corner threes and play off the ball and all those things. He also is pretty darn comfortable playing on the ball. Like, that has proven itself out repeatedly. And I think he has a flexible mindset as a player. I think that he'll be open to Kenny implementing new stuff. But it's just hard for me, honestly, in part because I just haven't seen it before. It's hard for me to envision him and Darius as, like, you know, when I hear Kenny trying to play them together, Kenny coming from the Warriors, I envision this Steph Clay partnership where both of them are off the ball quite a bit and screening for each other and taking attention away from each other because they both have a bunch of gravity. And I was interested by Kenny saying that they're two of the best shooters in the league, which I think Donovan is considered more of a scorer just because of the kind of shots that he takes, which of course is a function of the offense that he was in before under JB Bickerstaff, which was a lot of pick and roll heavy, go do it kind of stuff, right? At the same time, like, Donovan's going to take the kind of shots that he's comfortable with. He's grown comfortable during his career taking a bunch of pull-up threes. Kenny, as much as he's saying he wants to get off ball opportunities for these guys, he's also telling Darius, you need your shot volume up. We want you to take more pull-ups. So I just think the Cavs have it's a really interesting dance they're trying to do there.
I think it's really interesting you talk about Donovan getting off ball and Darius being able to be the table setter, all these other things, right? But the one thing that we really talked about today when it comes to Kenny Atkinson was how much he harped on Evan Mobley, right? And how much that is going to impact how things change this season. Because when we were talking about internal improvements, he literally said it starts with obviously Evan. Just with his age, 23 years old, he's just going to get better. So, like, this is a guy who we talked about the minutes being a little bit changed. That we're talking about usage being changed. That we're talking about 3-pointers, how much he's handling the basketball, all those different things. And on multiple occasions on this podcast, we have talked about how much we can compare Evan Mobley to, like, Tim Duncan or Kevin Garnett or those kind of guys. One of the guys that I think we might have left off this list that I think to me might be very comparable to Evan Mobley is Chris Bosh, and how much Chris Bosh was able to impact the Miami Heat's run when his role was changed to more of a 5-out spacing, right? Because we talked about last season how effective it was when the Cavs were able to spread the floor, get spacing opportunities, and even in Kenny Atkinson's system, that is going to become more efficient. Chris Bosh went from shooting one 3-pointer a game to, by the end of his career, it was 4 3-pointers a game, right? And that's being able to bring the ball up, all those different things. Even in one of the podcast episodes with JJ Redick and LeBron James, LeBron talked about how they created like a Mack truck lane when they were bringing the ball up the floor, and the bigs weren't allowed to like run through it. So it was like the box from both sides of the court, and they basically just had everybody on the outside, which allowed for them to go and set up not only shooters on the wings and in the corners like Chris was talking about earlier, but also allowing Evan Mobley or Chris Bosh at that time to bring the ball up and have the ball in their hands and be able to facilitate. So I wanted to get your opinions on being able to give Evan more usage rate, but also how he's going to be used as a passer in this new offense and how important that was mentioned throughout today's press conference.
Well, guys, to me, this isn't as straightforward as people want it to be. Because if Evan's usage rate goes up, that means somebody's is going down. Could be Donovan. Could be Darius. Is that a good thing for the Cavs? It's worth debating that. Right? If Evan's touches are going to go up, what does that mean for Jarrett Allen? Jarrett Allen, you know, there's a little bit more to his offensive game sometimes than people give him credit for. He's got that little mid-range pull-up that he started knocking down last year. He's got the hook shot with the right hand, the hook shot with the left hand. He's a lob threat, things along those lines. So usage rate requires somebody else to lose touches and lose opportunities throughout a possession. The other thing is Evan still at this stage of his development is at his best around the rim, in the paint, near the dunker spot, free throw line and in. So I get this idea of wanting to make him more of a perimeter threat. I totally understand why people want to do that. Him with a three-point shot, a reliable, consistent three-point shot, makes him more dangerous. It makes the Cavs more dangerous. It allows their offense to do a lot of different things. It opens up the floor for Donovan Mitchell and Darius Garland too. But it isn't the best thing for Evan at this stage of his career, at this stage of his development, because he's just not as comfortable out there. And if you put Evan Mobley in a situation where he's most comfortable, you're going to get the best of Evan Mobley. If you start putting him in situations where he's not as comfortable, it could slow down the offense. It could bog things down. It could take touches away from Darius Garland and Jarrett Allen and Donovan Mitchell and maybe Karis LeVert, shots away from Max Strus. So you have to be really careful about trying to get Evan to evolve and take that next step and fill in the gaps of his weaknesses while also making sure that he's in a position to be successful. And the Cavs are in a situation to be successful. So I'm very curious to see how Kenny Atkinson is going to do this, actually implement it. Not just talk about it, but actually implement it and see some change. Using him at the elbow makes sense. Using him as an offensive hub makes sense. Allowing him to rebound and run, that makes sense. Allowing him to initiate offense after a miss or something, that all makes sense too, right? You think that Evan is capable of that. You believe that moving forward, he needs to be that kind of guy for the Cavs in the future. But I just don't think it's as simple as people want it to be. And the other thing is, the Cavs aren't the Celtics. The Cavs aren't the Denver Nuggets. However you want to tier these teams these days based on what happened this offseason, they have some work to do to catch that top tier. I think it's fair to say that. But they don't need drastic change. I think what they need is more creativity. What I think is they need less predictability on the offensive end of the floor. But I don't think they have what should be classified as a broken offense that Kenny Atkinson has to come in and completely overhaul and rework and get working again.
So I'm glad you brought up the point you did about Evan, Chris, because while you were gone, one of the things that Ethan and I talked about, I think we made this a poll in the subtext, is like, can the Cavs spend their season trying to hone energy towards developing Evan Mobley as an offensive hub and still maximize their regular season ceiling? Like, the idea is you choose the Evan Mobley path. That's the long-term play. If we agree that Evan Mobley needs to be a different kind of offensive player for the Cavs to win a championship, then you need to divert some of your attention in the regular season towards that. But the early results may not always be pretty. Like, you may struggle as an offense as a whole, and that may drag you down in the regular season as a result. And we only have so much time. Like, we had the second, and maybe as consequential as the championship word being said, second apron. That word was mentioned during the press conference. So that clock is ticking. The Cavs are going to get more expensive, not less expensive. So you don't have all day. You don't have all day, and you can't do both of these things. You can't invest all the energy you want into Evan Mobley as an offensive player and win the 55 games that you want to win to get in that top half of the Eastern Conference bracket. The other thing is, it's one thing to give Evan Mobley the opportunities to do the things that you want to see him do. It is another thing for him to do them. Like, we all know that Evan Mobley is sort of a reserved, kind of a shy guy in his interviews, and I think you see that sometimes in his play. Nothing about him on defense says shy. That guy's a stud. But he's still kind of finding his footing on the offensive end, particularly given that he has two, at their best, like top flight offensive engines on their team. And I'm like, particularly with Donovan, this is just the nature of basketball. If Evan Mobley and Donovan Mitchell are on the court at the same time, Kenny Atkinson can say, that's a word salad right there. He can say, Evan, grab the rebound and run. But then what? What happens if Evan Mobley runs up the court and then Donovan Mitchell's clapping for the ball, which he always should be. Donovan Mitchell should always want the ball, and the Cavs should always at least think about giving it to him, right? What happens then? Like, Evan's going to have to show some assertiveness, it's with these opportunities. If we're doing the thing where Evan just dribbles around and then hands off, that is one thing. It's a good thing to get Donovan Mitchell off the ball and get those different kind of opportunities, different looks. But that's kind of more of this. It's not like JB Bickerstaff was saying, Evan, don't you ever dribble the ball. I swear to God, I'll bench you. That's not what was happening. Yeah. That's not what was happening. Evan Mobley has gotten rebounds and pushed the pace before, but now do stuff with it. Do stuff with it while there are other guys on the court who can do stuff with it and do stuff with it better. And you know that. That's a hard adjustment to make mentally as a player.
Absolutely.
Especially for a guy who has been programmed his entire life to constantly make the right basketball play and involve his teammates. And if Evan's out there and he's like, hey, I'm playing alongside Donovan Mitchell, right? Like, I could catch the ball at the elbow and I can try and operate. I can run some DHO with Max Strus. Is that a better option for us than Donovan going downhill in a pick and roll situation? You know what I mean? Like, those thoughts come into Evan's mind a lot because he's programmed to make the right best basketball play. And sometimes that's going to lead to him scoring 33 points against the Boston Celtics in Game 5 of the Eastern Conference semifinals, right? But some other times that's going to lead to him taking what he considers to be a back seat and not being as involved on the offensive end.
And I think it's really important to kind of round this out. Like, the efficiency and how he gets those points, again, is important for this because, as Chris mentioned, if he's uncomfortable, it's not going to be pretty for anybody, right? And, I mean, over the last couple of years, over the last couple of seasons, Evan Mobley in 2023 was in the top 3 for rim percentage, right? He was 77.7%. And Jared Allen in 2022, he was 3rd. He was 78.1%. So these are guys that are comfortable at the rim, are able to produce at the rim, and do those other things. If they're able to expand their game, I think it's going to be able to open up a lot of things. But if not, how are they going to be able to be efficient with each other on the floor and be able to still score at the rim while both of them could be in the dunker spot? And I think that will be under the microscope, especially when Chris goes down to Sarasota to see the training camp and see what Evan Mobley's comfortability level is. Because obviously in the summer, it's a lot of videos, it's a lot of Instagram and Twitter watching, and it seems like he's more comfortable, but obviously those could just always be clips. But we're going to have to wait.
Real quick, can I say one more thing? Based on what you just said right there, Ethan, I think you said it well. What is the Cavs' appetite for a 5 for 15 Evan Mobley night? Again, to your point, opportunity. Okay, we've said we're giving him opportunities. Okay, now he needs to take the opportunities. Let's say he takes the opportunities. What if it doesn't look great? What is your how much is Kenny Atkinson? It's cool to say now in the abstract, But how much is Kenny? Like, are you really committed to letting Evan Mobley? Because there's going to be some growing pains here. It's not, like Chris said, it's not always going to be 33 points. Again, game 5 against the Celtics, the way it was in that playoff game. That was great. That's what it looks like when it all comes together. And by the way, there was no Jared Allen on the court in that game. Jared Allen's going to be on the court sometimes. And Evan Mobley's not going to look like, even when Jared Allen's not on the court, it's not always going to look like that. So are we prepared to applaud the Cavs for letting Evan Mobley play inefficient basketball? I think I'm there. I'd like to see it. I'd like to see them at least try. But be careful. What I would say to the Cavs, like, be careful what you wish for with all this. This is, we need to spend time getting Evan Mobley involved. I think you're right. I think we do, but I don't think it's going to be a bumpy road at times.
All right. And with all that being said, that'll wrap up today's episode of the Wine and Gold Talk podcast. But remember to become a Cavs Insider and interact with Chris, me, and Jimmy by subscribing to Subtext. Let us know what you think about the takeaways from today's press conference with Koby Altman and Kenny Atkinson. And also, give us your takes on what you think needs to be changed with the Cavs or what you're looking forward to for this next season. To do all of this, sign up for a 14-day free trial or visit cleveland.com/Cavs and click on the blue bar at the top of the page. If you don't like it, that's fine. All you have to do is text the word STOP. It's easy, but we can tell you that the people who sign up stick around because this is the best way to get insider coverage on the Cavs from me, Chris, and Jimmy. This isn't just our podcast, it's your podcast. And the only way to have your voice heard is through Subtext. Y'all be safe. We out.